Hi everyone, I'm Hilary Thorson. Thanks so much for attending our session, Consistency and Large Projects. We are here to share what we've learned working on large-scale projects in the Wikimedia community. Our experience is drawn from working with library and GLAM metadata communities with Wikidata specifically, but we think these ideas can be applied to any large project in the Wikimedia space. We'll be drawing from two projects as examples. The LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group started in April 2019 as a space for community discussion of Wikidata-related topics with the goal of understanding how the library can contribute to and leverage Wikidata as a platform for publishing, linking, and enriching library linked data. The Program for Cooperative Cataloging, or PCC, is an international cooperative effort aimed at expanding access to library collections by providing useful, timely, and cost-effective cataloging that meets mutually accepted standards of libraries around the world. It began a Wikidata pilot organized by its Identity Management Task Group in September 2020 to experiment with incorporating Wikidata into authority creation workflows. As we were reflecting on the projects we've been part of, we determined that consistency was really the linchpin behind various aspects of project organization that we'll cover. These include participants and community, meetings, personnel, communication channels, documentation, orientation, dashboard, and feedback and assessment. And now I'll turn things over to my colleague Susan Radowski, who will talk about the participants and community.
Thanks, Hilary. Inclusiveness is a consistent value that informs our approach to developing our community. All our decisions about outreach and activity are examined with an eye to welcoming every interested participant. All skill levels are welcomed and encouraged to contribute. Questions and new ideas are the nourishment that helps our community to thrive. When the PCC Wikidata pilot group performed their first assessment, they were not only thrilled to see that participants were joining from various locations, as seen on the map here, but also noted that they were excited to see that nearly a third of the pilot participants are not currently PCC members, as it has long been a goal of the PCC to increase partnerships and collaborations with other communities. They also noted the spectrum of experience levels and that participants came from a broad background of environments and affiliations. Wikidata is a vital tool for cultural heritage institutions that join under the GLAM canopy and is continually finding new proponents and uses across user communities and in the larger population. Wikimedia strives above all to be a positive culture that lends itself to inspiration and innovation. Okay. Both the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group and the PCC Wikidata Pilot Group adhere to basic principles of consistency and inclusiveness in planning and conducting meetings. Scheduling can be as detailed as access to a shared calendar with regular planning meetings and as flexible as an awareness of the dependencies of the schedules of related groups. Inclusiveness and community are primary values in designing meeting format. Every effort is made to welcome participation and collaboration in real time. This combination of consistency and flexibility provides a reliable foundation with room to learn and grow. Next slide. Organizing and maintaining any large project is a substantial and complex task, and assembling a collaborative group to accomplish project goals offers enhanced efficiency and scope. In our experience, on the LD4 project, welcoming volunteers provides the best option for achievement and expansion. Over the course of regular organizing meetings, a diversity of talents, backgrounds, and perspectives emerges, providing unforeseen ideas and opportunities. The LD4 group has evolved along these lines, basing our structure and goals on founding Wikimedian Hilary Thorson's proven framework from the group's first year. Our team of 5 volunteers, including Hilary, who has completed her term as Wikimedian, have divided up the roles and tasks she had previously performed alone. We have developed our skills, finding new strengths and competencies. Over the past year, members of the group identified topics of interest, reached out to speakers, presented the bi-weekly calls and working hours, and developed organizing and assessment tools and documentation. Working together as congenial, supportive colleagues inspired us to refine and improve our collaborative methods and to look to the future of our project. Consistency requires sustainability, and we have found that exploring the notion of sustainability for a group that organizes and maintains our large project leads us back inevitably to the values of inclusiveness and positivity that permeate our shared culture. Our vision for project sustainability centers on welcoming an ever wider circle of volunteers to continue our evolution as a group that champions the sharing of Wikidata knowledge and practice in the GLAM world and beyond. Now I'll hand it back to Hillary to talk about communication channels.
Thanks, Susan. It's important to find a communication space where people participating in the project feel comfortable asking questions, getting advice, and sharing their work. It may be helpful to choose a space similar to one's project participants use to communicate with each other. This consistency can make newcomers feel at home. For the PCC Wikidata pilot, a listserv was chosen as the library metadata community regularly communicates and asks questions in that space. For a structured project like the PCC Wikidata pilot, it can be helpful to have the organizers monitor the list to make sure questions are responded to. Eventually, as a community is created, project participants are often able to help each other and share their expertise. For the Wikidata Affinity Group, which has a more amorphous group of participants, a Google group serves as a logistical space to announce events and a Slack channel as a more informal space to ask questions. The group regularly publicizes events on other GLAM and Wikimedia communication channels like listservs and social media to ensure the widest audience is aware of the opportunity to participate. While communication space within the project is important, it is also necessary to make sure communication channels to the Wikimedia community are open and available, so that as participants gain confidence and comfort with the project itself, they also know how to reach out and share their work with the broader Wikimedia community and where to go for advice about questions beyond the project scope using communication spaces like Telegram and project chat. Documentation preserves the work you do on projects for posterity and can be helpful for demonstrating the value of your work to stakeholders, sharing workflows and processes, and allowing others to build off of your successes and lessons learned in their own work. Wiki project pages are used by both projects. They make the work immediately publicly available for discussion and reuse, are accessible to the Wikimedia community, and can be resource hubs for training materials and relevant links and tools. They also serve as a good introductory space for new editors to gain experience with editing wiki text and use those skills to engage more widely with the greater Wikimedia community. Project pages can also be useful for documenting best practices for the project that may be discussed in other spaces. Each institution participating in the PCC Wikidata pilot can create their own project subpage and utilize it as they would like. The pilot uses a best practices tab in its project page to outline best practices that arose from questions raised by pilot participants and answers that emerged based on pilot participants' experiences. That way, these practices can more easily be shared across projects. And now I'll turn things over to my colleague, Will Kent.
Hi, everybody. This is Will Kent from Wiki Education, and I'm here to talk to you about how the dashboard, some trainings, and some orientation and support can help you with consistency in large-scale projects. Specifically, I'll be using the PCC Wikidata pilot as an example, and I know others in this group will expand on that in a little bit as well. But let me get started by sharing my screen and talking about an orientation that I offered the PCC Wikidata pilot back in 2020, almost a year ago. And the whole idea behind this was to gather everyone interested in the pilot together and introduce them to Wikidata. There were unknown levels of experience, and having a little orientation afternoon seemed like a good idea to get everyone on the same page. And I think this really helped the project establish itself and allowed everybody to ask questions that they might have had about Wikidata, know where certain resources were located in Wikidata, and just kind of understand some of the fundamentals about how Wikidata works. Having this strong foundation really set the stage for the project to succeed in the early days, and just to have people join quickly and know where they were going, and also to have leaders in the project be able to support people as they joined. Because with the scale of this kind of project, you need information to travel quickly from one group to another and down the chain. And I think having this sort of orientation was really helpful. Another aspect of this is establishing scope. So in framing Wikidata, we were able to kind of explain where the project began and ended. Wikidata, if you're new to it, it's really easy to forget, is completely overwhelming. And there's a lot of different ways that you can begin approaching a project on Wikidata. So having someone who's spent time with Wikidata, or a group of people who spend time with Wikidata, to kind of help show you how it works, and ways that you can have an impact given the set of data that you're most interested in, really saves a lot of time. So there are a lot of different ways to do this, and having a little training certainly helps set the stage and establish a scope for a project. And then from there, it's easy to move forward in the project. And one good way to move forward with any large scale project is the outreach dashboard that Wiki Education built and supports. And the outreach dashboard not only collects a lot of data from Wikidata, but it also acts as a home for this particular project. So you can have different project pages on the dashboard tracking different sets of data. And let me just stop my screen briefly and share the dashboard so you can see what it looks like. And this is a good example of a lot of people, 250 plus, working on a project, but in a manageable sort of way. So it splits it into all of these different dashboard pages. And this is the campaign that gathers all of the projects together. And it looks like there are about 38 running right now, and this number can continue to grow. And this is important because it's really easy to scale. And it's also really easy to get very specific very quickly. So if we wanted to do a deeper dive into one of these individual projects, we could click into an individual dashboard and look at specific items that had been edited and analyze it through that lens. But more importantly, if we scroll down a little bit here on the dashboard, there is a button for downloading statistics. And if we click this, there are several different kinds of statistics that we can download, which is a great way to establish consistency in a large scale project. So we can track individual progress throughout the project. We can track group-wide progress throughout the project. And each of these metrics may or may not be significant to the project that you're working on, but by virtue of them living here on the dashboard, it makes it a very easy stop for anyone running a project on Wikidata. This also helps with coordination because you can plan and pace, and if you're uploading large amounts of collection data, for example, it can help you with completion statistics, and also telling a narrative as you relay your progress out to people who might be interested in how your project is going, stakeholders and things like that. So again, every single dashboard has this download statistics button, and that works for each individual project within this particular large scale campaign. And then there's some general statistics up here at the top, which again, may or may not be relevant to the project that you're working on, but just knowing the number of people working on a project, the number of references added, and the number of items created is a really nice way to start to frame progress being made on a project. So those are a couple different ways that Wikidata can help with large scale projects. And I do have one more slide to share with you. So let's go back into this presentation. And you can download the statistics whenever you want. That's something that I forgot to mention. You don't have to wait for the project to be over, and you can download it at any pace you want. And then you can also customize the dashboard. So some of these projects listed useful links on their dashboard page. Others linked to wiki projects that they created. So it's a nice little central gathering point where you can not only have your statistics, but also point people in the right direction, which should encourage them to work on large projects more. So those are just a handful of ways that you can work on large scale projects, and it helps to have these additional tools at your fingertips and a little extra support from people to help you on your way. So with that, I will turn it over to whoever's next. Thanks, everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Caston from the University of Notre Dame and the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group. I'll say a few words today on feedback and assessment. A large-scale project is likely to run for a longer period of time or may not even have a predefined end date. Throughout the course of the project, gathering feedback from participants and conducting surveys to assess your project can be valuable ways to keep the project on track or change course to meet new needs. Work you've done to create a welcoming, participatory environment and establish multiple communication channels will come in handy here. Informally, remind project participants regularly that you'd like to hear from them about any ideas, interests, or questions they may have about the project. This can be brief announcements at the beginnings or endings of group meetings, as an additional line in any email communication, or semi-regular announcements on a chat platform if you use one. If you have multiple organizers, let each other know if somebody has approached you with a question. Especially if you're having a busy week, sharing the load can assure you can process the feedback quickly and make any adjustments or plans necessary. In addition to creating avenues for regular feedback from participants, large-scale projects can benefit from more formal assessments and reviews of project activities. This can take the form of asking targeted questions in a particular topic, or more general surveys to gauge the progress of the group and their needs. Hosting meetings where recent activities are reviewed can be a valuable tool to foster discussion on the goals of the group and act as a preamble to a survey to gather more information to assist future planning. To provide some examples, the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group has been hosting Wikidata working hours twice a month starting in early 2020. Attendance could be inconsistent, though attendees generally express their appreciation for the sessions. We wanted to make sure that the sessions were scheduled for times that could work for the most people in the most time zones. Issuing a survey via Google form helped us find new times for these meetings that worked for participants in the Americas as well as Europe. The PCC Wikidata pilot began in the summer of 2020. After nearly a year of project work by the community of librarians, a survey was issued to gather information about the pilot's activities, the organizing mechanisms that were most useful to participants, and suggestions for future sessions. This feedback will provide organizers with a wealth of considerations from the participants about future programming and ways to organize and share information. Both the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group and the PCC Wikidata pilot have administered surveys via Google Forms, which are fairly easy to set up and share with a group. It's also a good option if you have other documentation in a Google Drive space. Google Forms auto-generate some data visualizations that can be copied into other documents. These handy visualizations can be useful to participants, organizers, and stakeholders of your project. Here's an example of a simple pie chart that was automatically generated by the Google form that was used to solicit interest in participation in the PCC Wikidata pilot. It quickly visualized the experience levels that participants self-identified with, and then could be easily shared back to the group in a slide with the pilot kickoff meeting with other data points that the group would find interesting. Both groups have made it optional for people to share their name and contact information with their responses out of respect for any privacy concerns. Depending on the expected scale of your survey, i.e. whether you expect a few dozen responses or a few hundred, it can become difficult to synthesize answers within the Google Forms interface, particularly for open-ended questions. Viewing the responses in a spreadsheet where lengthier unstructured responses can be tagged and organized is a good next step. We find it helpful to set a date to close the survey in advance, allowing a few weeks for responses to come in. We also kind of provide a few announcements during that period or reminders to complete the survey. We also try to share group feedback back to the project participants and connect any new plans to feedback received. While organizing large projects can be daunting and unwieldy, our experiences with the PCC Wikidata pilot and the LD4 Wikidata Affinity Group have demonstrated that choosing consistent and sustainable models for key aspects of a project, like regular meetings, communication channels, documentation spaces, and metrics dashboards, provide a solid foundation to maintain the projects, while at the same time allowing flexibility to adapt to meet community needs that emerge through regular calls for feedback and assessment. We have all really enjoyed working on these projects because they have been on such a large scale. It has allowed us to help create and contribute to cultural knowledge in a global community context and given us the opportunity to interact with people from all over the world. Thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to any questions or comments you may have.